Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault 2, and we're back out here in my garage for another Garage Gun Talk. And we got some stuff to talk about. It's kind of funny, I made a video last night saying, hey, do you guys want me to talk more about current events and, gun politics stuff a little bit more? And some people said yes, some people said no. But the people that said yes said, hey, I like your take, and, you usually keep things balanced. And lo and behold, kind of two big things happened in the past 24 hours that I want to talk about that doesn't really deal with any firearms I have on the table to review or upcoming projects. The first one is the passing of Paul Harrell. And I wanted to talk about that because in the past 24 hours, I don't want to say I've done some research, but he said a couple of things that I had to look into because I really wasn't sure what was going on, because I'm not really somebody that follows a lot of drama, and I'm not really a big fan of different content creators kind of going after each other. I mean, we all have our opinions on certain content creators, and I'm sure people have their opinions on me, whether that be positive or negative. And that's totally fine, as long as the dialogue is, respectful, whatever. But I don't really hear of any other content creators saying anything negative about me. And the only time I ever say anything negative about anybody else, it's not personal. It's usually about their presentation style, like the Armed Scholar. Like, I feel like it's just clickbait, but I don't think he's a bad person or a bad individual or he's malicious in any way. I just kind of feel like he makes a lot of clickbaity things that you click on it and it doesn't really give you any definitive information. It's all speculation and maybe this will happen. But anyway, so I want to talk about Paul Harrell for a moment. And of course, with his passing, and I know that I've mentioned my thoughts on him in the past because he is a content creator that I really did not discover until he became more popular, I guess, the past, 2 or 3 years. And I started to hear his name. I'm like, who is that? Because I know this might surprise a lot of you. I don't actually watch a lot of firearms content on YouTube because I don't know, say I don't enjoy it. It's the bigger channels have become businesses and they don't feel, I don't know, as like genuine as they used to. In the early days of YouTube, I really felt like guys like Hickok 45, and I understood that as they got bigger and they made more money and had sponsorships, it's what they did for a living. I never blamed them, but like, I feel like so many people on the big channel side, everything is so produced and they have a staff, it's just the way it is. Okay. And I understand they have editors and promoters and media relations people. And a lot of times these content creators are associated with businesses, like the Military Arms Channel, he owns or is part owner of his own shop. Was it Copper Custom and things? So it evolves into those things and then become big influencers and so forth. And so I don't watch a lot of gun content, especially on the big channel side, because I don't know, it doesn't feel genuine. It feels like paid advertisements. And I'm not saying that's what they are. I'm not saying they're shills or anything. It's just, it doesn't feel interesting to me anymore. And then a lot of the politics channels now it's all speculation, and they feel like they have to put out so much content every single day, and sometimes there's nothing to talk about. So when there's something to talk about, it's the clickbait stuff, and so I don't watch that anymore. The channels I probably watch the most are the smaller channels, people that kind of do what I do. But anyway, so because of that, I never found Paul Harrell's channel until I heard other people talk about it. In fact, I think the first time I ever heard Paul Harrell's name was a few years ago when I guess he got into some like little tiff with the Yankee Marshal or something like that. And somebody else was talking about that. I was like, who in the world is Paul Harrell? And then I looked him up and I started to watch his videos. And immediately I had a fascination and a connection with him. And I kind of felt like what Paul Harrell did on his channel was so relatable to how I like to make videos and how I like to structure my videos and the pacing and the information and the production quality, because it's obvious he is not as well polished when it comes to either his presentation style or the cameras he used, but he was so passionate about the guns that he reviewed and the information he wanted to get out to people, and he had this like deadpan type of delivery when it came to his jokes and his humor, and he was also really good with long form content, which is what I make. I'm not here to make these little snippets of, check this out, it's the top 5 guns, and they just, lay it out real fast. He's very methodical about it, and I felt like that's what I like, and it was like in my style, although, I want to say is, even though I discovered him after starting to make YouTube content, I kind of feel like because of him, he influenced me in many ways, in a very positive way, and that I kind of wanted to emulate aspects of what he did because I felt a connection to it, and I felt like that's a style that I like. But anyway, as I was saying, I discovered him late, and I think that obviously he had such a very, very positive impact. And even his last video, where he recorded, I guess, last December, and I was always in awe when I discovered that he was ill with, pancreatic cancer. That every time he talked about it, which was very few and far between, in these moments, he almost seemed like it didn't bother him. And I'm sure there was elements of being scared. I don't know. He really kept his on-camera persona very, very to the point of, in the business of making content. But he always approached it, and I was in awe of what I assumed was his, courage and bravery in the face of the inevitable. And I saw the very quick deterioration with his, videos. You saw somebody that was very, pretty much in shape for his age, kind of wither away. And but he was still out there, and it was something that he was passionate about, was bringing good content to people and good information. And his last video, it was his style, where his last video was titled "I'm Dead," and he pre-recorded it, and he says, "If you're seeing this, I've died." And he, oh my gosh, everyone's laughing because he apologized for dying. I don't know, it's crazy, and he kind of opened up a little bit about what he was going through, and it was it also in his humor. I found it. I kind of want to laugh and cry at the same time, because, at the end of his videos, he would always say something like, "I'm a professional, don't try this at home." And after talking about, the cancer in his battle, he looked at himself and says, "Don't try this at home." It was so in his style and so in his type of humor. And yeah, it really affected me, because I never had any interactions with him. I did not know him personally. But I will tell you that after discovering him, I felt a kinship to him because of his style and the way he was. And it reminded me so much of the early days of YouTube, that it was just an awesome channel. And he's going to be missed a lot. And in his last video, he said something interesting that I had heard other people talk about, and I guess he had talked about in the past. He said something about, and this is not to bring up drama, and this is not to, anything like this. I have no horse in this race. I have no personal opinions about it one way or the other. But he had mentioned about somebody named Caleb in the past. And in his last video, when he was said, "I'm dead," essentially, and he said, I'm not going to be around to defend my reputation. And he asked people not to watch his videos that were pirated by other channels, and so forth. And he even brought this Caleb person up. And I couldn't figure out who this person was. Because as I said, I don't usually follow drama. I don't want to get involved. And I don't like it when content creators kind of get on each other's cases, because essentially we're all in this together, So after I guess because he felt it was so important to mention his name in that video, um, meaning like he took it to his grave to warn people not to listen to him. I had to go find some information, and then I kind of did like a little Google search, and I found out that this Caleb person, don't know his last name, but anyway, it came up as I guess an old channel called Gun Nuts Media. And I was like, okay, I haven't heard of this channel. Let me go check it out. And then I found the videos where I guess he was criticizing Paul Harrell for like the way he was shooting revolvers or whatever, and how he took things out of context. And then I guess I guess lied about Paul Harrell's military service. And then Paul Harrell made a whole like hour-long rebuttal to the video. And it was quite amazing. And first off, it saddened me that this Caleb person, who I don't know, who, by the way, I did discover he does have a current YouTube channel called Mr. Revolver. Once again, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I've never seen his content, but I did find it when I was, kind of looking things up. I guess he changed his name because of the controversy. And of course, people that were big Paul Harrell fans kind of went after him. But it does look like, based off of what I can tell, he did misrepresent, Paul and really besmirched his name. But in that rebuttal, which I listened to today, because, I watched his Undead video twice, just because, as I said, it's weird. It's like listening to a ghost now. But I went back and I found a rebuttal video and I watched it. And when I watched that video today, I realized why I like Paul Harrell so much. Besides his humor and his presentation style, is he opens this video up. And I think if you go to his channel and just look up rebuttal, I think that's just the title of the video. Okay? Because that's just Paul Harrell's way of doing it. Like his last video is I'm Dead. This video is just called Rebuttal. I mean, he doesn't really go into extravagant clickbaity titles to get you to click on it. You just click on it because it's a Paul Harrell video. And in this video, he lays out his case for why he does the things he does. And I swear, the first 10 minutes of this hour-long video, he lays out exactly what I go through as a content creator with my style. And that's why I think I felt such a kinship to him. And I didn't even know this. But he was talking about how people criticize him for being too long-winded. And he goes, yeah, I'm long-winded. But essentially, this is the way that I make. This is the way, or make videos. This is the way that I talk. And here's the reason that I'm long-winded. And he would say about having to give so many caveats and having to over-explain himself and go back to the beginning of time to give you all the information. And he was talking about, like, revolvers, for example. Like, he would say, what he would normally would want to say would be like, okay, in a revolver, normally you're going to have 5 or 6 shots. And then he would talk about whatever it is about the revolver he wanted to talk about. But because he didn't mention, hey, there's revolvers out there that have 4-shot cylinders. Some have 7 shots. Some have 8 shots. Some even have 12 shots, if they're in certain calibers. That he would just get inundated by these internet know-it-alls that just feel like, you're wrong. How dare you say this? It has an 8 shot. I'm like, and I was listening to him talk about this. I'm like, oh my gosh, that is exactly the reason I'm so long-winded in my range reports. And I give so much redundant information and I say silly things because I try to avoid having to deal with all those comments ahead of time. It was like to hear him rant in his way, which is his, that very, the way he talked, it was hilarious. But to hear him virtually say for 10 or 15 minutes all the complaints that I have about, addressing the criticisms people have of my channel was hilarious. Because I'm like, oh my God, I totally get it. I'm not the only content creator that gets this. And when I found out that he was that way, it made me feel so good because I was like, Paul Harrell, one of the best YouTube channels out there in firearms, one of the best guys, and he was going through exactly the same type of stuff that I'm going through. People that you get the know-it-alls, you get the people that speak before they watch the video, you get people, I shouldn't say speak, they type before they watch the video, or they literally give the wrong information. And it's not that I'm trying to be arrogant and say I know everything, but sometimes I'm literally like, for example, if I say a firearm is manufactured in a certain place, for example, I'll get the people, no, you're wrong. It's not made there. Beretta doesn't make guns in Tennessee. And you're like, oh, it says right here on the gun, made in, is it Gallatin or Galatian or anyway, however you pronounce it, Tennessee, wherever they move their factory to. But you'd be surprised when people say stuff like that. You're like, oh my God. And you just want to, it obviously bothered him like it bothers me. And as I said, I felt like this kinship to him. I was like, oh my gosh, he goes through everything that I go through. And I totally understand his video style, why he said the things he did. So I just wanted to say that the whole thing is, you guys need to go watch the rebuttal video anyway, because I think it might be my favorite Paul Harrell video of all time, because the way he lays out why he makes the content he does, and then he goes into a step-by-step rebuttal to this Caleb person. It was great. It was great. So anyway, Paul Harrell will be missed. I personally am in awe of his bravery and courage in the face of everything he had to go through. Now, my wife, in case you don't know this, my wife is a twice widow. She's lost 2 husbands to cancer as well. So she understands the battles that people go through. And, I kind of feel like there's a difference between, if you're, 95 years old or 100 years old and you get an illness and you're in bed and maybe you're not and you pass away, it's one thing. But to be as young as Paul Harrell was, what was he? I mean, I don't know how old he was. I would estimate 50s, in his 50s. But to have all the wherewithal, it's not like you're, like a Joe Biden in your sunset years and you have no idea what's going on. I mean, Paul Harrell was a smart dude, and all the way up until the end, he was there, and having to face that. And so, I'm just glad his pain and suffering is over, but I don't know. The Second Amendment community has lost, I think. I mean, there's a lot of great channels out there. I think they've lost one of the last great firearms YouTubers that was of the original spirit of what YouTube originally was. A guy with his camera that's not a professional presenter, that didn't have some type of ego to him, that just gave good content and was funny if you understood what he was saying. So we've lost, honestly, a giant, and he will be sorely missed. He'll be sorely missed. So that's my thoughts on Paul Harrell and his passing. So now I also want to talk about what happened today with the... I'm going to have to use some language because YouTube likes to censor stuff. Let's just say there was a mass casualty event in Georgia at a school, okay? And this was kind of breaking news today, and I guess it was 2 students and 2 teachers ended up being murdered. And I was just getting the news a few minutes ago that the FBI had the perpetrator, who is still alive. He surrendered. They were investigating him up to a year ago. Now, my wife is kind of a conspiracy theorist. She thinks that when it comes to a lot of these mass casualty events, that it turns out always that these people were known to law enforcement. My wife thinks that sometimes these people that are in government kind of, give them a little nudge to put them over the brink so they do these things, which will allow them to try to pass certain types of legislation. She's convinced of it. She's 100% convinced of it. That, look at the timing right now. With everything going on, the election coming up, this is the perfect thing to push gun control. We need to get something done. And as far as I can tell, and as I said, they haven't released any information on the weapon used, but I was reading in an article today on Fox News or CNN or something, that the student was in school that day, left a classroom, and then came back with the firearm So obviously he had it in the school, maybe stowed away or maybe in his locker or something. But it sounds like, based off of that information, and I could be wrong, it sounds like it was a handgun. Because how in the world would you get a rifle in and then not have it? I don't know. My gut tells me it's a handgun, because nobody in the media is talking about a rifle. And trust me, if it was an AR-15, they would be all over it. But it's hilarious, in a sad way, that even if this was committed, we don't even know what the weapon was. But I'm only speculating it was a handgun. Okay, so we don't even know the caliber. We don't know the capacity of the magazines. What are the anti-gunners already calling for? You guessed it, assault weapons ban. When most likely the firearm that was used in this event would not have been covered by that ban. So it's just one of those things, and the timing. The timing of these things is always fascinating to me. It always seems to happen. I know I've made videos in the past, and I know this sounds conspiratorial, okay? But the last 2 or 3 times when Congress had the ability or was scheduling a vote on something that was pro-gun, I remember when the Hearing Protection Act was going to be voted on in Congress. That was the day that Steve Scalise, at that congressional baseball game where they had that shooter, that Bernie Sanders supporter, brought that, I think it was an SKS, and he shot those congressmen, or at the congressman, and Steve Scalise was hit. Magically, that was the same day that pro-gun legislation was going to be voted on. And of course, that was then tabled and shelved, and it went away. Every time this happens, or every time it would be really advantageous that something like this happens, it always seems to happen. And we're going into an election season. We're getting really close to the presidential election. Tensions are high. And how better than to have something like this happen for them, where they can have this big gun control push. So if Kamala wins, the first thing she can do is executive actions and pass bills and all that kind of stuff. It's really weird. This never usually happens right in the middle of a term, right? It's always right now when something's about to happen. And I don't know if it's a mastermind overlooking it and controlling it, or if it's just happened to be like this group think of us as human beings, you know. I don't know. I definitely feel like on a mass scale, all humans are kind of tethered together. Like we all kind of feel things, if that makes any sense. You know, it's weird. I remember seeing this really interesting study on the internet, and bots that are looking at what people are typing and what they're talking about and predicting the future. There's like these predictive models, like for example, these AI robots will scour the internet, and they're just looking for the usage of certain words. Not that they're looking at the content of what's being written on these, groups, these message boards and things. They just look at the word count of what words are being used. And you'll find that if you look historically at like the lead up to major events, like what happened on September the 11th, you'll find that on the internet, in the weeks leading up to it, you started to see certain words being used, like towers, twin, more often, and it would kind of spike, terrorist event, airplane, or whatever. Like all of a sudden there was like this big spike in the usage of these words, but not in the context of, oh, there'll be an attack on the World Trade Center on 9/11. It just happens that there's a lot of news stories, or a lot of these words being used, and then these events happen. It's almost like we know it's going to happen, like there's some type of group think that can feel it. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it is. I know that's a little bit metaphysical, and even though I'm a very intellectual person, I'm kind of metaphysical in those ways. But yeah. But anyway, we lost a great one today, Paul Harrell, and I just wanted to talk about what happened into Georgia. I don't know if this is going to move the needle one way or the other. I just find the timing of it to be very convenient for the anti-gunners. But I'm also curious what's going to happen, because the perpetrator of this crime, who I will never name, because I don't want to give them any notoriety, surrendered. Because normally these people want to go out in a blaze of glory. We never really know. But this person's alive. So maybe if somebody nudged him over the edge, you might find that in the next few days he happens to delete himself because he's a loose end. He wasn't supposed to surrender, if you know what I'm saying. And the people in charge will make sure that he can't tell anybody about what happened. I don't know. Maybe that's a little conspiratorial. But anyway, so that's what's going on. And obviously for the word of the day, we're going to say Paul Harrell, the legend. It's going to be really sad to not see any of his videos anymore. I know his brother's taking over his channel, and his brother seems like a nice guy. But let's just be honest. He's not Paul Harrell. He's not. So, nothing against Roy. Nothing against Roy. Seems like a good guy and is knowledgeable. But, man, to think I'm never going to see another Paul Harrell video again, it's sad. I think what I'm going to do is I really need to go back on Paul Harrell's channel and just go back and watch a lot of his videos that I did miss, because they're all great. They're all great. I learned so much. So all I can do in my life is hope that the project of the Texas Gun Vault, in some little way, I mean, Paul Harrell's a giant, but in some little way, I help people like Paul helped so many people in the firearms world and inspired them to, make either content or to just be Second Amendment advocates or whatever. So I hope in my little tiny way, compared to his giant stature, that I can do that. And Paul Harrell is definitely a role model of the Texas Gun Vault. So, looked up to him. So anyway, let me know what you think about any of this in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.